Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Tom Barry, CEO of Westside Barbell. Great to have you on the show. And we've got Alex Sterner as well, the trainer of champions, the Atos strength and conditioning dude. Who else do you train who's a world champ that's not Atos, Alex?
Uh, Work with Johnny Tama, PJ Barch, um, a good number of people outside of Atos, but obviously, being right down the street from Atos, we work with a lot of their competitors.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Tom Barry, great to chat with you, man. We had a phone call last week, chatting some good stuff, and basically we're just like, fuck it, let's go on a podcast, man. Let's go because we had a good mutual friend, John. He'll be listening to this. Big shout out to John. He put us in touch, and as we were chatting, I was like, man, we should be talking about this on a podcast. And obviously we were speaking about Sterner as well. So I was like, fuck it, let's get Alex on. We need to get him on as well. And it's just good fun to sit down, just have a panel, and just shoot the shit. Tell us a bit about how you got started on the with Westside, Tom. For those who don't know.
Uh, Came here for a week internship, and really, like every good Irish person, I never left after 15 years. But we're pretty fortunate in college that the lectures we had kind of clued us into there's essential reading and accessory reading. And the accessory reading was far more beneficial than what you needed to learn just to pass the test, and the book of methods was right in there. So I sent a Hail Mary email over to Louis Simmons and his wife, the time did all the emails for him. So she said, yep, come on over. And then I figured out, well, how much did this cost? Because everything cost money back then.
Yeah,
And there was no charge. And it was kind of like, well, where's the catch? So turned up, hit it off well with Louis. And at the same time I started there, Matt Brown was coming in and was able to work with him. And I met more pro athletes in my first week of Westside Barbell than I thought it was just going to be powerlifters. And then I quickly realized a lot of the education I got in college was a lot of it just did not apply in the real world. And that's when I really started my mentorship and tutelage under Lou. And 1 week turned into 2 weeks, 2 weeks into 6 months, and 6 months into a year. And here I am. I took over for Lou when sadly he passed away. And our goal is to try explain relatively simple methods and try not to overcomplicate things. And lifting weights will not get you hurt. And it transfers over and kind of to promote the conjugate method and his philosophies and ethos and towards training.
were you a big lifter before you went over there?
No, no, I think I've recalibrated what a big lifter means been
Yeah,
here. Um, Before I came, I did kickboxing with Thai, and I was horribly average at it. But I did a lot of calisthenics, basically barbell training. You go through college, you go through resistance and conditioning. So I had a, I thought I had a good understanding. Had the typical ACSM down for 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2 up. So when I first did bench press at Westside Barbell, they're like, "What the heck are you doing?" Um, but yeah, I said a good theoretical understanding, but the practical did not match up.
what were some of the big key learnings you got straight off the bat? So let's say you get the West Side, let's say the first month in, you kind of like, fuck, have your eyes been opened straight away? What are some big takeaways you got in like within the first like month to 6 months?
The main thing's the main thing.
The main
When
thing,
you commit,
the main things you got like doing the
just
internship. What are some of the main takeaways you got with like within the first 6 months?
it was just say if it was max effort day, the main objective is to lift max effort. It's not all these uh like 60-minute warm-ups, all these aspects, trying to train all this tissue, do all it was like literally our goal is to get in there and lift the heaviest weight possible we can on that day. It doesn't have to be an all-time record, but you're trying to lift heavy. And then when they would do the lifts, they would all scatter to different parts of the gym. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? And then they're doing accessory works to target weaknesses. And I was like, okay, so they're isolating different muscles to target that specific weakness. I'm like, okay, this is very different. And then I also learned that if you adhere to a sheet of paper, you're screwed as a coach.
Mm.
That if you're not constantly looking at your group, adjusting right on the day, that you're just going by the sheet of paper for the next few months, like you're going to be screwed. And getting a good relationship with your athletes, getting a good feedback loop in, listening to them, never criticizing, analyzing, and like really just having a humongous common sense approach to a weight room
Yeah.
is that you have them there for 60 minutes, maybe 90 minutes of a day. If you're working with athletes, they have other skill acquisition aspects they have to do. So you're trying to get the most out of the training session that you can. And if they're there for 60 minutes and I'm going to waste 40 minutes on getting them ready, we only have 20 minutes of active work. So it was really keeping the main thing, and having really good feedback loops and learning so much from your athletes, and then training your athletes to be coaches themselves. So then that way you can truly analyze that you're not over coaching. You're not like basically being a cheerleader on the side. You're there actually getting some really good data from them.
Oh yeah. For the listeners who aren't too familiar with the conjugate method, could you give us like a brief overview of like what is the conjugate method and how would that be helpful for, athletes either in NFL or MMA or even sport like wrestling or jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, it's a system that every week you know how strong you are, how fast you are, where your weakness is, and what you need to improve on. So you're getting a weekly feedback loop. It's based on three methods: maximum effort method, dynamic effort method, and repeated effort to near failure method. So max effort is you're working up to a one rep max on a compound movement, either for upper or lower, depending on the day. Dynamic effort movement is our method is for fast rate of force development. So you're working on speed, intensity, and density in that workout. And then following those two is your accessories, and we call that based the repeated effort method, where you're doing sets and reps to target a weakness and improve on it. And the dynamic effort method rotates every 3 weeks, and max effort we rotate every week, and we usually come back every 10th or 11th, 12th week around that to retest your maxes. And in between each workout is basically a mini assessment. We're seeing, okay, we're making improvements. If we're seeing an exercise not carrying over, it's cut on the spot and changed out. So it's like this operating system. Once you understand the fundamentals, you can explore it. You can change what needs to be changed based on the feedback, what you're seeing, but it allows you to know every week where your athlete stands. And when we started getting into jiu-jitsu athletes, like it was like we had guys who were competing 30, 40, 50 times a year. So then we had to rethink of like the misconception of the 8 week fight camp, where like that's gone out the window. And then we realized like, oh, we can just build them up to capacity where they're 90% of their best all year round. So they can take competitions whenever it comes. And if they have one really big event, then we might be able to harness training a little bit towards that. But this, I think it's a huge fallacy. I don't know what your guys' take is, but this, oh, I need a 12-week fight camp. I'm like, that's just not realistic. You should be ready all year round, because if you're taking your foot off the gas with training, then injury occurs. Like you need to be consistently training. You just manipulate volume. Obviously, I have common sense, but taking 8 weeks off or just using 8 weeks to train is, I think, is just obsolete. It was catchy. Like for fighter, like we started that. And then more I learned from Louis, I'm like, this is just not, we just have to get them ready all year round.
Yeah. Take it away, Alex. I could see you
Yeah,
nipping
man,
at
dude.
the bum.
Yeah, I love that, dude. I think a lot of guys who aren't super bought in already will sort of fall into that mindset of a fight camp, right? They've latched onto this idea. It's something that's been like popularized. So when a lot of people start working with me, that'll be like the foot in the door. They'll seek me out because they're in a fight camp. And man, I preach something very similar. In fact, what I really tell them is if they do have something substantial that they prepare for that would choose them to seek me out in a fight camp scenario. One of the first things I do is that event happens. Let's say it's Worlds or ADCC or what have you. I tell them that our fight camp is going to occur after that. What we can do in the weight room, we can recover from more volume. There's far more that we can do when they don't have that looming pressure and super high training volumes for their sport. After the fact, and overall, I do like to look at that year plan. I like that high readiness year long, and like you touched on. The change that I prefer to make when I have somebody year round is when they are, ramping up their live training for their sport, is I like to chop out volume, still get that quality work. And what I mean by that is volume in the weight room, to account for the added volume on the mats. But yeah, man, what you were saying is music to my ears. Very similar approach. Though I will say, it's a matter of getting somebody on board with that when they are still under the impression of the fight camp where you change all these habits, you do all these things differently, in that like laser
Yep.
focus. So yeah, it takes a little bit of massaging to get them on board with that more long-term plan.
Yeah, and that ties into culture, right? When someone comes in, you're trying to immerse them in like, here's our philosophy, here's our culture, here's what it means for me to be a strength coach. Like as an athlete, I want you to have the best opportunity to acquire skill, display skill in your sport. And I will do everything I can. It will not be developed in 8 weeks. And like that's like a problem when you work with some NFL athletes, you get them for such a short period of time. You're like, I'm literally just getting you healthy. There is no real work done. And depending on where the athlete is, sometimes their physical literacy is pretty low, but their skill literacy is very high. They just don't know how to handle their body. And for some, they can pick it up in 3 weeks, some 3 months, some it takes 12 months. And back to your volume, it's the same thing. I'm with you to where it takes a while for them to build up the capacity for workload.
Mm.
And then your coaching eye comes in, like you understand each athlete is different. Some are workhorses. They love volume. They thrive off volume. Others, not so much. And it's like to know when to back off and like context is key. But I'm glad you touched on that. To me, culture is everything. If you don't have culture and philosophy in your weight room and stick to your principles, then what is the athlete going to get from you? You're going to be every month is a new workout of the month. Like, okay, we're going to do this. So like Men's Health magazine comes out every month back in the day. Train like GSP. And like, you're not going to be fucking GSP. But that's what uh people want, especially if they're extroverted, and you can manipulate that. But like for us from day one, we hammer home culture that it does not get easier, you just get better over time.
That's the culture of jiu-jitsu, and I feel like it's slowly starting to change. Although when I see like when we're putting out content, some of the comments we get, you're like, "Fucking hell!" Like just how people just don't understand this basic fundamental concept. Everyone wants like an 8 week block they can buy or a 12 week block they can buy, but like exactly what you guys are saying, it's an all year round. It's like it's a life endeavor to building up fucking these qualities that will carry you through to sport. And obviously, the stronger you get, the more capacity you can fucking handle, the harder you can nail down on those. But when it comes to like high intensity competition times, and we were speaking about this last time, Alex, is like you've got what when you've got that comp coming up, obviously your jiu-jitsu training or MMA training is going fucking through the roof. And it's like if you're trying to fucking hammer in more shit into the weight room, it's too late. You've already missed the boat at that point. You should just be trying to maintain those qualities as you're getting into as you're getting like right to that fucking competition.
Yeah, and I think at that point in time, novelty is kind of dangerous, right? You got somebody who isn't lifting and they show up and they're training in a new environment, with different expectations, potentially movements that they're not accustomed to. I don't think that's a good time for novelty. Those are times where yeah, I like to slash volume. I like to have continuity with a lot of our training in those points in time. Yeah. So while that is the time that a lot of competitors will seek me out, it's kind of when you get them in that moment, it's not like I'm going to turn them away when they're 8 weeks out from Worlds or something like that. But it's kind of for those 8 weeks, sort of like, Tom was touching on earlier. I'm not really going to elicit meaningful change for those 8 weeks. It's kind of like do no harm, set some, lay the foundation, set some standards. Don't crush them with too much, even though they're going to be super motivated to. You're going to have to really be pumping the brakes, and then try to set that mindset and expectation that our work begins after this event. And what we're going to do is over the next year leading up to this event again, we're going to do the work required over the next 12 months to make it where next year you're going to come in with a totally different package.
Mm.
I agree 100%. The a question we get, like, I think people bash powerlifters and powerlifting without any good reason in terms of if you want to get strong, they have the blueprint, like here is how you get strong, especially in the big three. And if you're going to learn bench squat and deadlift, why would you not learn it from the best in the world? Where people lack is the interpretation. And when we first started trying to talk to athletes and coaches, it was pretty ambiguous. We said, well, we're trying to get as strong as necessary, not as strong as possible. Then the next question is, well, what the fuck is as strong as necessary? And like, it's a fair question to ask. And to me, it's diminishing returns. And diminishing returns is in the sport. We want to get you as strong as necessary that you can handle to carry over to your sport. But if I'm giving you another 100 pounds in your squat and it's not carrying over, in fact, it's taken away, well, then we've got too far. We don't have the conditioning base. And it's the staircase effect. And that's why it takes time. And if you don't have a good culture, they're not going to buy in. If you start them off too hard, they're not going to buy in. And, but if you get the buy-in and give them education, just don't like, here's a sheet of paper. Like, no, here's why we're doing this. Explain the purpose and that was the West. That's what Louis did. You're like, oh, I understand why I'm doing this. It's not frivolous. This is actually carrying over, and I'm getting more bang for my buck if I select the right exercises. I don't have to do 30 freaking different exercises here to train this very specific thing. I'm making the main thing the main thing and treating exercises as tools. Like I would love if like someone came out with a book, here's the 12 exercises that you need to do for the rest of your life. It just doesn't work like that. Exercises are fucking tools. They deliver force to everyone differently, and treating them as such. If you're an absolutist on this one thing, well, you're omitting everything. So when people tell me, well, that exercise is dangerous, I'm like, how? Like to me, as the coach is the dangerous part. If you can't do it, you can't do it. But nothing is inherently dangerous. You just lack either the capacity to coach it, or you have some ulterior motives to either push something else.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a skill issue.
Yeah.
Yep.
The skill and load issue. Or it's like you just haven't built the capacity to do the exercise.
For sure. I meant from like a coaching perspective, right? If you
Okay,
if
yeah.
you if you're gonna take an exercise and write it off entirely, in every context, that's a skill issue. You just don't know how to use that tool.
Yeah.
Which is, it's fine. If you don't know how to use it, just say, I don't know how to use it. Choose from the other
Right.
thousands of exercises there, but there's no need, well, that doesn't work. I'm like,
Right.
I like there's what tens of thousands of athletes in the world. I'm pretty sure some of them are using that to really top-notch ability.
Mm.
Right. For sure.
What were the weight training sessions like at Westside Barbell, man? Were you getting stuck in with lifting with the boys?
Oh, dude, I was my first training session, and Louis had me. It was dynamic effort day. I had to do speed deadlifts, and I was doing 5 reps every 30 to 45 seconds. And I thought I knew accommodating resistance, but how we set up bands was not how to correctly set up bands. So after my first set, I was just like, oh, I'm in for that. So I got 3 sets in. I am bent over like a dog pooping. And Lou's like, well, you're not as strong as you look. So you get to the other side of the room. But it was just eye-opening to actually see what like strength been displayed. And it wasn't just the weights lifted, it's how they lifted them. And then seeing these guys jump. And like these are not what you consider like, oh, like a triple jumper, but the explosiveness of that maximum effort strength is transferring over to their box jump. And I think it was Dave Hoff, he jumped on a 52-inch box in boots. You're like, this is just cool. Like this is, you're like, oh, there's a transfer of this maximal stimulus to the central nervous system, like via a squat to this exercise.
Mm.
But other people say you're ludicrous. Like, oh, you're going to get slow. I'm like, how? You can't lift it. Like Fred Hatfield said, you can't lift a heavyweight slow. So just what, and then the accessory work. That's where people, how dense and intense the workouts were. 80% of the work of the training session is on accessories. Once you get that 20% done, the accessories develop a weakness. I'm like, oh, this is something that's missing. Is accurate selection to target a weakness. And if all three of us have weak triceps, well, we're picking exercises that carry over. So you might have 3 different exercises. And that's what started hammering home. Well, an exercise is just a tool.
Mm.
You're trying to find your A list, your B list, what works for you. And the coaching, like just watching, Lou would never criticize. He would always analyze. He would tell a story. He would figure out who the fuck the story is about. But it's always something to get them better. And you were making changes on the spot. Like Louis never had anything wrote. It was all in his head. And everyone got better because there was a system. And that's where like, oh, we shouldn't be so reliant on, especially when you're training in-house. It's hard when you're doing stuff digitally with people, especially in volume. You're trying to give them a general aspect. But I think you do a better job generally if you have a specific core group. So if you're a coach and you don't actually work with athletes in-house, you're missing so much. And it's been able to change on the fly. They'll come in like, oh, they're moving way too slow. okay, we're going to change this up. Volume is coming down, and been able to have the confidence to do that. And um, but it was just amazing to see these powerlifters been so athletic in other things. And that's where like, oh, maximal strength carries over dynamic effort, being able to be intense, like having true intent and intensity, and then the density of the volume in a short space of time. When we started working with the MMA guys by 2012, and Louis said to me, like, it's very hard to overtrain these guys. I'm like, okay. So we were doing an hour and a half, 2 hour sessions, and it was obnoxious to
in the
where I just didn't,
in the
and it
weight
was just
room.
lack of, yeah, it was lack of experience on my part. I'm like, okay, we're trying to do all this, and I'm like, oh, we really should hone this into being a lot more dense. Like
What
if
did
you're
you?
looking at rest,
Sorry to interrupt. No, you go.
I started like going, do we really need all this rest? So we started manipulating rest, and then like, okay, well, what exercises gives us a lot of volume? And like, well, sled work is really our cheat code to add a lot of volume into a workout. So we started putting in sleds, and then exercise selection. Okay, like be cognizant of how you're laying out your exercises. That if we can lift lighter weights and get more from it, well, then it's a good thing. So we can actually recover. So we just started. We call it the worst compound interest. It just every exercise layer upon layer. So they get more difficult, but the weight doesn't necessarily have to get up or they're getting that stimulus from it. And then we got a system where it's just literally training time divided by volume. So we have an average volume load per minute. And now we have a number for these guys to be competitive because we want people to be competitive in our training groups because training partners is everything. That was one thing from another thing from Westside, that your training partner is your job is to make them better than you. So then you have to get better than them and everyone staircases up against each other. But having that metric, they're like, well, how much load did I get per minute? I'm like, you got 3,000 pounds. Okay, I want to get to 3,100. Then you see them in the doing the accessories, problem solving. Okay, how can I get through these accessories, not efficiently, but in a manner to where it's I can get through it and add more volume. So in a workout, you're teaching goal setting, you're teaching problem solving, you're conditioning through intensity, and in 45 minutes, like I think our record is 55 minutes and 500,000 pounds of volume. Now, that's not something you're going to do all the
Jeez.
time, but it was just that was for one particular phase. And as you know, you can't do that all year round.
Yeah,
But we want to go, okay, what's the extreme we can get to without anyone breaking down? And technique, we will give you a 5%, maybe 10%, depending on the exercise, of like it has to be 90% correct.
yeah.
I don't want, because again, we're not in absolute strength. When we do, I am not a highly skilled coach in Olympic weightlifting. I have enough understanding probably to get myself in trouble. But I like some exercises that they're not dangerous, but the athletes are inefficient in them. So they're getting more carryover, less weight.
Mm.
And but yeah, it's we kind of waffle on there, but it's just been able to it's just common sense. It's like this is the where I don't know, I think our industry is fucking crazy right now. That we don't know the difference between influencers, trainers, scientists, strength coaches, and I feel like we have to try at least bring these people in and give them the counter narrative to what's popular, and that's what Louis was. Louis was the ultimate contrarian. If everyone was going left, he was going right and at pace. And it's like it's everything comes in cycles, but there's so much misinformation and people want it to be so complex. And like if you break down training, it is relatively simple. And it's just trying to get the right stimulus. And if you're an athlete, is to be able to turn up to the mat all the time.
Man, you mind if I jump in on a couple things? I jotted down a couple things as you were talking there.
Sure.
The thing you were just saying about sort of like everything you encounter on social media, right? And the different like sects of people. And at one point you mentioned how valuable it is to have that in-person group. Man, I
Yep.
think something that's not talked about enough in that exact context is like the rate of feedback. It's not that coaching doesn't happen online, right? But in terms of the discussions that happen, I've got my remote training clients, right? They send me a form check or something. I get them info, and to for them to then apply that info, it's the next time that they're doing that exercise, right? The amount of time between the exchange of information is so stretched out versus, man, I got a client doing their ramp up sets. They're not even at a work set yet, and I'm already throwing them some info, right? We're already having the back and forth. That amount of exchange that's happening between client and coach is astronomically higher. Like you are fast tracking your development of communication, skill as a coach, learning what cues make sense, which ones you want to ditch. A lot of the stuff that you're saying about like common sense approaches is I found through my experience, I say far less as a coach. When I'm coaching now, man, I used to straight out of college and stuff, I would give dissertations on stuff. And it's not that I don't educate my clients now. I do, but when it comes to actually communicating about an exercise or the cueing that we're using, when to cue and when not to cue, right? Like all of those things you get hammered out in person. And for these coaches that have transitioned to only online, unless you have a really, really solid foundation of in-person training, I just don't think those people are getting that level of experience,
Yeah.
learning to like elicit the changes, not just changes like in terms of structural adaptations, but changes in terms of how to communicate a point and get the person to do the thing that you're trying to get them to do. It's sort of like a in this social media age, which I leverage as well, I think on a lot of younger coaches, that's being sidestepped or overlooked or not valued in the same way.
Massive.
Would you agree with
I
that?
uh, I would love a 1000% button here.
Yeah,
Um, it will make you a far better remote-based coach if you have real-time athletes because they're going to show you a lot of ways where stuff can go wrong. So you can put in parameters, someone asks you a question. If you're solely remote-based and you don't have an active group, then you as a coach can't grow.
right.
You can't grow because you're not in the weight room, you're not seeing this. You can't do the variations, the changes that you're seeing is popping up. And then it's just like any martial artist. If you're a coach, you should always be trying to make yourself better, refine your process. We don't need to invent anything else. The golden age of strength and conditioning, we're benefiting from it. Our goal is to interpret and refine. Like this whole thing of trying to invent these new systems or exercises or whatever the new thing is. Read books, go back 50, 60, 70 years. Most of it's been done before. The Soviets had data from 200 million people. Like we don't have that access, but we can at least learn from it. Like Louis had a quote, he didn't invent toilet paper, but he's smart enough to use it. I'm like, yeah, we should be using this and not trying to bastardize other people's work. And the remote sector, like I'm all for people making income and educating people. But if you're doing it and you don't have any active athletes, how in the heck do you know what you're doing is right?
Yeah.
No, and your feedback loop when it is primarily social media driven, you're going to over like prioritize novelty because that's what gets attention and clicks, right? Like I
Yeah.
don't know, even when I'm posting one of my clients, if they're doing one of the more boring or just fundamental exercises, it just doesn't get the attention of something that's a little bit more fringe.
Mm.
And it's not to say, I mean, again, they're all tools, they all have their use. But if you're building a value system over what is actually getting attention, it's going to skew your perception of like what's actually most effective. And I think that's a problem as well, right? It's like the overemphasis. Social media is a super useful tool, and I think there's plenty of great coaches who also leverage it well. But it's that prioritization of that sort of feedback loop of like what is getting engagement and everything else. There was another thing you said there where you were talking about you don't need to invent anything new or whatever. Man, I talk to my coaches at my gym all the time. I could learn nothing new in strength and conditioning and get way, way better as a coach by just working on communication skills, on getting information that I do have here and packaging it in a way for my athletes so that they can actively use it. I think that's something that's like not focused on nearly enough. Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you're saying makes a ton of sense, and it's a breath of fresh air to hear.
Well, I appreciate that. But let me ask you guys this question. When you first got into, I don't know what your pathways is, but ended up being a strength coach, did any bit of you think, I want to be famous?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Like I just to the process of putting out content, it's always just about the messaging. Like the getting followers or whatever is just a part of it. It's like, what message do I want to, what do I want to tell people? Like when I was a kid, what mistakes did I make that I saw other trainers and all these flashy bullshit going on that I can just destroy and be like, fellas, just do the fucking basics. Just lift this and just hone in on that point. And if I can just get, if I can like build a bigger audience to share that message, great. But fame, like who the fuck, who actually wants to be famous? You're awful. Everyone fucking coming up to you, hey man, da da da. You're like, I don't know all these people.
Right.
Fame is nothing. It's about the message and how much, how like the positive impact that you can have on people. But again, to your point, it comes down to communication. Can you communicate your message clearly and articulately to a large group of people, whether it's athletes or just someone sitting watching their phone? Which again, it comes down to like to why I think people showing flashy exercises and all that bullshit, it drives engagement. So it's like fuck. And this is the kind of world of social media that we're at now. It's like, all right, how do I get my message? How do I get people to watch at least the first 3 seconds of this fucking video and then for them to like maintain at least into 20 to 30 seconds to maintain this, like to at least get something positive from this video?
Well, I think the in-person coaching keeps you grounded, right?
Yeah,
There's
yeah, yeah.
nothing wrong with understanding the system of social media, understanding how
Mhm.
to leverage attention and all of these other things. You can do that ethically. And what I like to bring that back to is communication skills as opposed to just novelty or shock factor or
Exactly. Yeah.
whatever can also grant you somebody's attention, but is not actually effective. It's not ethical in a lot of cases, right? Like so if you look at some of the worst stuff that's shared on social media,
The
in the
video you
health
did
fitness.
yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. The guy talking about the Chinese secret to melt fat off your body. I mean, it's just blatantly unethical. He's lying, you
Yeah.
know? So I think you can be aware of that. There are also the very successful in-person coaches that are stubborn. They're like, oh, social media is not for me. And I view that as a shame as well because it's a grind to only do in person.
Yeah.
Online, if you start to get a bit of a following, and you are able to leverage some of your services, you can live a pretty good life, right? Like there's utility to it, but there's also like having that in-person training keeps you grounded, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm going to work on communicating more effectively. I'm going to package my message in a way where people want to actually consume it. But I know what actually works every single day as I'm working with people.
Yeah.
If you're just throwing novel stuff at your athletes all the time, you're going to watch them just, break down. You're not actually sharpening skills. You're not building a foundation, right? So you know that that doesn't work there. So why would you then preach that? You can actually tell how much somebody works with people in person by just seeing what they're willing to claim online. It's
Yeah.
very obvious.
Mm, true.
And it's uh, back to in person, the athlete comes first. We're very fortunate to have highly accomplished athletes. They're the ones going out doing the work. They're the ones going out there doing the competitions. Our goal is to give them more of themselves because that is the answer. Like if I can, when we used to start talking with athletes, nearly everyone would say the same thing. They would come in and like, what do you want to be? I want to be world champion. I want to be the best in the world. You're like, okay, let's refine that a little bit. What about if we make you the best physical version of yourself you can? And if that equals world champion, phenomenal. If not, it's not a bad runner-up prize. You've tried everything, but the athlete comes first. And they're the ones going out there. We're just trying to educate. But when the strength coach, it's an anomaly where they become more popular than the athlete. You're like, okay, we're nothing without athletes.
Yeah.
Like I would, if we had the skill and aspect of to go out and be world champions, I would say we'd probably jump in it. But sadly, that's not, and we are here trying to get the most for them. And without them, we don't have anything. So if we're trying to be more popular than our athletes, like no, we're a part of this whole machine. We're an important part, integral part. But without the athlete going out there, like they're the ones that putting themselves in the line, and our job is to give them more of themselves.
Well, and that ties back to what you said earlier, right? When you're saying that it's more than a sheet of a paper. If you're worshiping that sheet of paper, that program, that pre-written thing that you planned out on limited info, and you stick to that as gospel, you're not putting the athlete first.
Yeah,
You're taking your perceived expertise, and that's something that you see a lot too. I think some people who sit in the role of coach for too long start to get to this like guru status because they're used to they're used to people coming to them with questions. They're the guy with answers. And then all of a sudden, their answers become hyperinflated in importance, and they have all the answers, as opposed to like, man, what about when your athlete walks in, asking them a series of questions, getting their input, right? Allowing your changes or auto regulation or whatever you want to call it to be based on them, not
Mhm.
not on you, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's very important as well. And both of those, I mean, both of those things you said, the athlete comes first, being more than a sheet of a paper. Those are just like two sides of the same coin, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
The sheet of paper thing's massive because, like, for people who are just solely doing online, you miss so much of that. Back to Sterner's point, like, you can prescribe something to someone, and if you've got an athlete, you're going to see how they're moving straight away, straight by their warm-up sets. You're like, oh, this isn't moving well today. Let's back it up. But if you have an online client and your touch points after those sessions, and they've already completely cooked it, you're watching those videos, you're like, oh fuck, and it's you, it is a lot harder doing that remote coaching because that touch point is just you can't spot it straight away. Then it's going to be like, okay, for next session, when you feel like this, da 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 da, and it's just you will eventually get there, but it's just such a slower process. But I think a lot of only online coaches will miss if they don't have tons of coaching experience.
For sure. I also try to view the online space as like you're doing the best with what you got. Like, man,
Yeah.
thinking back at myself as a teenager, grabbing, the latest whether it was the latest article on T Nation or, muscle magazines or reading, a new book or, downloading Chico with the bros and then taking a crack at it. Like, dude, we floundered through some stuff. So like I also do think that providing that guidance and stuff, man, I wish when I was 14 and just
Yeah.
taking a crack at this stuff that I could have sent a video to somebody who was really experienced and gotten like that feedback while it is delayed, while the process is stretched out and nowhere near like what it is in person. Man, I would have killed for that,
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Way better than nothing. Way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's where I go with the genius of Lou. Before the internet, he was putting out VHS tapes. Like he was Gary V before there was a Gary V. Of like, hey, he wrote in Powerlifting USA and put his cell phone or his home phone number on it. So hey, give me a call. You got questions. He was out, and then he learned like when he wrote, it was so fucking smart. He knew he couldn't write hyper specific, but what is the general takeaways I can take and write that's going to help the masses? And that's what he did because he knew if he wrote so specific that it would benefit one person instead of 100 people.
Mm.
And that's like where context is king. And when you're doing remote or online, like we do it too, is we tried to do a program for the general good, not make it hyper specific. You try generally do your best.
Yeah.
And and I going back to the strength conditioning in general, I think our education is fundamentally flawed in how we're taught. Like, would you trust an electrician who did 4 years of college and comes to wire your house with no practical experience?
Hell no.
Like,
No, I
no.
agree.
But like it's more of an apprenticeship than it is an actual college course. Because at least you have a back and a forth to where, yes, you do some internships, but you actually need true experience and skin in the game to be able to diagnose what's right, what's wrong, what is common sense. But I think we rely too much on theoretical aspects, and when we get into the field, I was equipped to train a person. You went to a weight room of 50 people, now you got logistical aspects, and they didn't teach us logistics in college.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, it gives you a really good base on anatomy, physiology. Don't get me wrong, it has its place. But I think there needs to be far more emphasis on the practical aspect of strength and conditioning.
For sure.
That was you, Sterner, when you had the Atos boys back in the day, and there was like
For
20,
sure. I
20
mean,
of them in
but
the room.
also even before that, I was really lucky to be in a strength and conditioning program in college that was very ingrained with our Division 1 athletic program. They required us to intern there, and they only required us to do 100 hours. I did 1,500. I was like, I started a year early. I asked the strength coach that I was working under. I was like, "Can I stay after this internship?" She's like, "Hell yeah."
Awesome.
And that was huge. And then even, yeah, I started to work with the Atos guys. I wanted to recreate that Division 1 environment. I wanted to train those guys as a group. We had the sheet of paper that was the general framework, but it was a matter of, dude, you got a guy coming in there that's got an AC separation. What are we going to modify so that he can still get some sort of valuable training, but not worship that piece of paper and have everybody do that exactly the same. It was yeah, I've always valued that experience. And I don't know. I don't know if it's just me getting older and having that classic old head mentality of like, oh man, the kids these days don't value it the same. But especially with this advent of social media, I do think that an overemphasis of that earlier on in your journey, like, man, I'm glad Instagram wasn't what it is now when I was back in school. I'm like very grateful for that because I placed the emphasis uh in an area that gave me incredible returns, and it got me started on this path. It kept me going on this path and it kept me grounded. And now, even though I am placing a high priority from a business perspective on social media, I'm not letting it skew the way that I approach things and what I view as effective and how I weigh it compared to my experience.
I agree totally.
Yeah. Um,
Here, I've actually got another note down from something Tom was saying, if you don't mind me jumping in on it.
Hi, man.
Um, yeah, so Tom, you were talking a lot about taking certain accessories to address some sort of perceived weakness or whatever. And what that tied in for me, this is something that I think is huge, is like autonomy or self-efficacy, really empowering your athletes to have a voice and an ability to choose things, and the way that increases buy-in, right? They feel like they've got more. They're not just, a soldier being told what to do. They're a part of the process. And what that translates to in terms of how you approach exercises. Man, if you're just told to do something and you're just checking a box, you're never going to hit it the same way as something that you have chosen to do because you understand it, you believe in it, and you think that it's going to solve one of your problems. Super, super underrated. Like the ability to have that or to really like foster that environment in a room full of athletes, I think is huge. Tom, could you like elaborate on that specific process for you guys?
Yeah, it's one that comes about by educating the athletes on feedback. Like some exercises will suck, but they carry over, and some suck because they're terrible. And it's what's the difference between both? Like some people will throw in hard exercises just to be hard, but there's no carryover.
Mm.
And then set the expectations of what a professional is. Like if this is going to be a good relationship, I'm going to trust them that they're a professional athlete and they want to do what's best for them. So then being able to trust the athlete, then being able to trust you. And then over a period of time, for some, they pick up on feedback really good. I mean, a lot of female athletes, their feedback is pretty on point. They have a far more they have a different level of emotional intelligence compared to guys will tend to drift into, I'm good. I'm going to keep going. You're like, okay. You're saying you're good. Your body's not saying it's good. And having an environment where they're able to speak up. Because if one of our athletes comes in like, dude, I'm wrecked. I'm like, okay, that is something that we're addressing right here, right now. I'm not going to force you through everything. Like the guys came back from New York, their car got screwed up. It took them 13 hours to get home. They still turned up for a workout, and they're like, hey, dude, we are wrecked, but we want to work out. What can we do? And I manipulate volume. It's building up that trust, and then looking at the athletes of explaining, here's the fundamentals of this exercise. I want you to explore it. Once you have the technique down, explore it. I don't care if it doesn't all look the same, but once you're getting something from it, and then get that feedback from them, and then that's how you learn about like different angles. Like some people might be able to do a Williams press by slightly changing the angle or where their elbows are, getting more feeling in their tricep. But objectively, if I'm looking at them, like that looks wrong. But they're saying, hey, it's actually burned up my tricep more than the other way. Like, okay, that's a feedback mechanism. But it just comes back from educating the athletes.
Man, I think there's another example, and this is something that I've really tried to do as I've gotten more experience. Like not having that hyper-inflated sense of self-worth as the coach, right? Like what you just explained there is the perfect example. Utilizing feedback And accepting that, yeah, just because something isn't like the textbook example, it can still totally be valid and in some cases far more ideal.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of
And
coaches don't like to accept that. They don't like to take the perceived like back seat, you know?
Yeah. You gotta find what works for them because they're like, you're like, man, I'm this form is not ideal, but it's like it feels great for me, and you're like, can we tweak a little bit? And you tweak it a little bit, and it's like, does this feel good? They're like, nah. And to your point, if they'll find their own autonomy within certain exercises and certain variations. When you're doing those, when you're doing the accessories, were they swapping them every week, or would they just hit them for a certain period of time and then be like, yeah, I'm good with this. I've kind of like maxed this out, and then another one? Because I think there seems to be like a misconception that they're changing the accessories almost every week with the Westside method, or is that a complete myth?
no, it's a really good question, and there's a bunch of context associated with it. Um, Not like on average, generally, for we will keep in accessories for 3 weeks. Like
Yeah.
that's the rule of thumb when we rotate them out. If you have a very extroverted athlete, they like a lot of change. If you have an introverted athlete, most of them like to see the same exercise come up, and you have to, okay, what is the balance here? So sometimes if we see an exercise that is just it doesn't feel right, the athletes are like, it's one a kind of check mark. If there's so much skill acquired in it, then there's no point doing it because they're wasting time in training trying to acquire a skill that's not going to carry over. So why would we do it? And then if it's just hard, like there's exercises out there that are just plain and utterly hard with no chance for the training. And then we feel at the end of the workout, we talk to them, hey, how did that feel? And they're like, dude, it just made no sense.
Mm.
It's like, where do you feel it? Like, I don't know. I'm like, well, that's not really a great feedback loop to have. So we'll change it out then. Max effort's the same thing. We might change out stuff that's carrying over, but as you get more experience over time, you basically have an A, B, and C list of exercises. Like, here's my A. Like, I know these fundamentally have feedback loops in them. We can adjust within this group of exercise for any athletes. Uh, B's are usually like, okay, this didn't work, go to our B, and C is the new stimulus. This only comes in on some parts of the year where we need to change up or we have that gap of time, like let's try something new so it doesn't the training doesn't get boring. But really it just comes back down to you're just watching and getting that feedback from the athletes. At the end of the day, we're in a relationship business, not a dictatorship business. If we are a dictator to the like they just don't buy them because they're high level athletes. They know what they want and they're smart. Like they have way more feedback than we can ever subjectively see.
And when you're saying let's see if that's going to have a good crossover to them, what kind of questions are you asking your dudes, your guys, to be like, oh, like, are you feeling stronger on the mats? Like, what's your question to probe? Is this crossing over to their training?
It's something as simple as that. Like, how did training go this week?
Yeah.
And I'm not a big believer in that you can't get instant feedback. Like, obviously, the longer something comes in, you can get better feedback. But I'm like, hey, how did you feel? Like, hey, I feel tired. Like, okay, maybe this is going through the adaptation period. Hey, give this another 2 weeks. I think it's going to have a positive carryover. And then like, okay, how did it feel week two? Like, hey, I don't feel as tired and I feel stronger. Or, hey, how does your framing feel? I'm like, hey, it feels actually way better. And it's giving it enough time to percolate to get the feedback in. But so normally within that 3 week period, we're getting the feedback of like, hey, how's rolling going? How's the mask going? How's technique going? How's your body feeling? And it's just a quick, simple friggin' we use Bridge to do a little survey. And I tried to explain to them like, hey, this is actually pretty important for feedback loop. That way I don't have to call all 20 of them. You can just put this in there and we're like, okay, I'm feeling this on the mats. I'm like, does that make sense for the exercise? If we're doing a round of floor press variations, especially on max effort, dynamic effort, we know that, hey, your frame is going to feel a little bit weaker on week one, especially if it's in the accessories. How does it feel week two? Are we starting to adapt to it? Okay, week three, boom, and rotate again. And if they feel nothing, like, okay, there's no transfer of training. So it's this back and forth, but it's that feedback loop that guides it. If we're getting no feedback loop, then we're just pissing in the wind, hoping our theory is working.
What have been some like perfect exercises that get a high hit for feedback loop for you?
I would say like we have our mainstays. Like for main movements, the floor press has become such a huge movement for jiu-jitsu athletes. And I know like there's people out there who say, well, you need full range of motion, or like floor press is perfect for, and this didn't come from me. This came from Dante. Like we have a cheat code with Dante in that he has a high level physical literacy, high IQ to give like really good feedback. And he's like, dude, this is really good for framing. And I'm like, okay. Because I have a very low literacy in the skill aspect of jiu-jitsu. So we have a great relationship. Like, hey, I can pick his brain and vice versa. But that's been a staple. Like we know that is a really good tester for us compared to a regular bench press. Like we like the floor press. The sleds, a great universal, like for it's the safest unilateral exercise you can do. It's great for volume. You can do upper body and lower body. We know that's a staple. Box squat. Usually a safety squat bar, maybe a camber bar. But so box squat, straight bar, safety squat bar, camber bar, and then deadlifts. Conventional, standing on a 2 inch box, standing on a 4 inch box, pin three, pin two, and good mornings we'll put in. But we like that's one of those exercises that I love for accessories, but we'll rotate them in for max efforts maybe once every 8 weeks because it's high risk, high reward. And I want to make sure that I can get eyes on people when they're doing good mornings.
Mm.
And but they're not something that should be omitted. It's just something that should be set up correctly. But I think like that's our core, and then the accessories wave in and wave out.
And you said you do you like to do your plyometrics on a like almost have a dedicated day to your plyos. What,
Yeah, it's
so to speak, like a dedicated like kind of
yeah.
time period for them. What do you like to do for the plyos for the boys?
To give context on, if you don't mind me just going through why
Yeah, go
we
yeah, yeah.
when we were doing jumps or plyometrics in our main move in our just a max effort day or dynamic effort day, we're basically jumping through fatigue. We're not getting a true plyometric exercise because we're making the main thing the main thing. If it's max effort day, we're trying to develop absolute strength. If it's dynamic effort day, we're trying to do a fast rate of force development. And I want to have at least 3 solid days of basics going in that they know what the objective is. So by pulling out plyometrics and having longer rest and shorter reps, we can get true plyometric aspects in our workout without taking away from max effort day, without taking away from dynamic effort. So we just do some postural exercises, which is stuff that it would take away from the culture and take away from ruining the workout. If you're doing all these different exercises, well, you're just wasting time. And I keep hammer home like the main thing is whatever the main thing is for that day. So that's where we'll do some calisthenics, like some basic movements, different types of planks, different types of stuff to control your body. We might do some stuff for the joints, and it's just micro doses. It's not this whole extravagant thing. And then it will be different types of jumps. It could be box jumps, deck jumps, hurdles, broad jumps. We just rotate through them, and then we're just trying to have some sort of measurable distance and recovery. And we've had a pretty good success with that. But that's if you can train 5 days a week. If you can train 3 days a week, we'll figure somewhere to put those in. But I'm not going to completely bastardize the purpose of the day just to make room for these exercises that do not have carryover. You have to prioritize what is going to carry over the most.
Mm.
What's your guys' philosophy on these?
Yeah.
I'll jump in first. So something that I'm big on, something I was going to bring up in another context to what you said, but like I think when you got a North Star, there is wisdom in understanding that there are like lots of different ways to get to that North Star. So like what you said makes perfect sense. I think when you're talking about like keeping the main thing, you're essentially like corralling them or like doubling down on intent and focus, right? Because like intent and focus, we could boil away all of these like very technical terms. If somebody, even if someone doesn't have like an expert helping them, if you're training with intent and focus, you're gonna get somewhere, right? So like by having it, if you are really just going to be like, hey, this is the intent of today's session. And sure, there are some tertiary things you're doing, but if you can just do that, today was productive, right? If all of a sudden the fire alarm goes off after that main block, right? Like they still got a valuable stimulus that day, and I love that. That's something that's big with my athletes as well. Sometimes they come in, maybe they have super limited time or whatever, and yeah, we've got like we're just going to really collapse it down and focus on that. I think that the way that you keep that the central focus is great. Personally, I like to have smaller doses of plyos more frequently. I think they're especially for a lot of full-time jiu-jitsu or combat sport athletes who are doing multiple training sessions a day. I think it is a great way to to get their nervous system fired up. I think if you dose it appropriately, it can get them to a state of very high readiness. They can practice a valuable skill with a minimal amount of fatigue. But like you said, sometimes if you are then loading that before something that is the intent and focus, can that potentially water it down? Sure. I think it comes down to like anything else, just being flexible with how you go about it and dose it. But yeah, I like to do smaller doses more frequently. Another thing that I did really like that you said though, I'm a big fan of when I have a professional athlete, I actually really like having high training frequency for the weight room, but shorter sessions. I love it. I think it's far less fatiguing. I think over the course of a week, you can get a lot done. And on any given day, you're not driving them into the ground. So part of what I do for that, I actually really like on those shorter, more frequent sessions, I will have multiple general, like physical qualities that I'm going to hit in each session to make it so that we're not really uh, accumulating a ton of fatigue on any one energy system, on any one tissue, etc. So I really like to have small doses of various things in each session, keep it short, high intent, relatively low volume, get them out of the door, and just know that you're going to have them a couple more times that week. Huge fan of that. With my online stuff, that is not the reality for people who are buying an online program. So I do not have that same focus for them. A lot of my professional athletes, I will have in 4 to 5 days a week, and they'll be relatively short sessions. Huge, huge fan of that. Yeah, a thing that I do like for some of my clients is I will do like sometimes I'll sort of shoehorn plyos and then like glycolytic work for conditioning. I will have a day where I do
Mhm.
just that. I think those go really well together. Get them fired up, get them moving really, really explosively quickly, and then have that carry over into those really intense uh lactate threshold metabolic type work. I think that's like a beautiful day in and of itself. But yeah, again, there's a million ways to do it. I even think
Yep.
with my own programming, depending on the person, depending on their personality type, like you were saying as well, there's lots of ways we can go about it. With some of my more broy guys, I'll have a day where I know this is like a very low like fatigue day, but they'll just do plyos and arms. Guys love that, and
Mhm.
especially for some of the ones who aren't super bought into plyos yet, you dangle the thing that they really want to do. They just want to do that bro workout and get some sets of arms in, get a pump, take some pictures in the mirror, and I sprinkle some plyos before that to get them really revved up. Yeah, I'm a big believer that there are a million ways you can go about
Yep.
it. But yeah, I like high frequency, low volume, focus on intent. I think the underlying principles for what we're doing are very similar. But yeah, it might just be broken up a little bit differently.
Mm.
When you're doing smaller doses of plyo, is that within the training session, or do you have a separate session for that? How do you implement it?
Most commonly, it will be smaller doses done more frequently. I think leading multiple sessions a week with plyos can be very valuable. Now, if we want to be like, if we want to have the strict definition of plyos being like the
Yeah.
super short ground contact time, I mean, I'm right now speaking very generally.
Mhm.
Jumping power plyos, the ones that aren't like the high impulse power movements where we're looking at something like a push press or a derivative of an Olympic lift.
Yeah.
I'll sort of group in all like jumping plyos, med ball work, that sort of thing. Those will be like two exercises at the start of the session, 2 to 3 sets, really, really high intent, trying to move as quickly as you can. relatively low reps per set. You also don't need a hell of a lot of rest for those. You can get those two exercises out of the way pretty quickly and be at a very high state of readiness, low state of fatigue after that, and get other quality work in. So that's generally how I break it up. But again, depending on the person, we may do that differently.
And it's similar to what we do with my boys. So I'll have my guys 2 to 3 times per week. We do all the plyos at the start. So we'll have 3 to 4 like light tier jump variations where it's like just working on proprioception. And this is a good chance for them to like understand the jump variations that we're going to go through. Then we'll have 2 to 3 max of high intensity plyometrics where we're going to be focusing on that quick ground contact time. I just say high intensity because if people are entering the room and, Owen, who's been doing it with me for a while, or fellas who've been doing it for a while, obviously they're going to be very proficient, especially getting up on high intensity on one leg. When you're coming down like from a hop onto one leg, you're getting like 6 to 8 times body weight landing on that leg. So if you got someone new coming in, I'm just like, just work in an intensity that you feel that you can work at. Make it high, but understand that the movement's not going to feel, smooth to start with. And we just do 3 of those jump variations, moving up and down like an 8 meter route, like 8 meters there, 8 meters back. We'll do like a 2 leg variation, a split jump variation of some sort, and then we'll get on a single leg. Or we'll do a 2 leg, a single leg, and a single leg. And then we'll do some deep tier work where we're just working on, building strength, building some muscle endurance, and again, firing up that nervous system, getting into deep ranges. So we'll go like a 2 leg deep squat variation for like 20 reps, a split jump variation for 20 reps, and then we'll get you on a single leg, either moving at like, all of these are like either like moving at multiple directions. And I think what I found from doing these variations and learning this from a guy called Matt McInnes Watson is it builds when you first start it, you're like, fuck, this is really hard work. And you get people just battling through it when they first start. But as they get stronger and they really start building up more capacity to do these, such a good warm up to do your weight session, especially when it comes to squatting, deadlifting, cardio, anything. And it is hard to start with, but then you're like, come on, like have some water, take a bit of rest. And I found if you're already at that stage where you can't handle so much players, of course we cut it down a bit, but week to week, you'll start building it up and you'll see like bigger improvements in their strength anyway. But I find doing the players right at the start of the session is just a great way to, first of all, fit them in somewhere, but also it gets them fired up for that session. Also within the group environment, especially with the fellas that we get in, there's so much banter going on. And if someone's really shit at the plyos, it just makes them want to get better at it, especially for that hop. And you tell them, look, being really good at getting high up on this single leg movement, it may not have the best crossover or whatever to sport, but it's going to make you more athletic. And it's definitely going to improve like your rate of force development of getting up off one leg and do wonders for improving, tendon ligament health. And it's nice to see you see massive improvements in the space of like 2 weeks of people who come in and they see the boys who can do single leg work really well from the plyos, and they're like, "Fuck, I need to improve this. Otherwise, I'm going to be like the laughing stock of the room." So you just take them aside, give them another progression to work on, and then week to week they just get better and better and better. Soon enough, they're just slotting into the plyos like the rest of the boys. But this takes literally like 10 minutes to do, so we don't spend too long on it. It's like 10 minutes of work. Bang, we're now ready to lift. We've got a bit of a sweat going. Let's go. That's the way I like to get the pliers going.
I got a question off of that. Charles, you already sort of answered it, but maybe in a little bit more detail. Tom, I'd be real interested to hear your input on this. So, as a coach, and I have a system for this as well. What is your approach to like communicating and gamifying plyos? And what I mean by that is like obviously there are some plyos. Let's say like deep tier plyos, right? Where you're not really doing that for output, right? I'm talking about ones that you're going for more of an objective measurement or even a qualitative one, right? But you're looking for a consistent improvement over time. How are you communicating that, especially as it compares to something way more objective and straightforward, like your main lifts or your accessory lifts, something that you're doing dynamic effort or max effort, right? Like that's pretty straightforward in terms of how
Yeah.
you gamify that. Those are associated with a
Super measurable. Yeah.
well, yeah, you're looking to do that over time. So maybe Tom first, because Charles, you explained sort of the group dynamic and getting them to improve that way. But Tom, how do you guys go about communicating that and gamifying those specific movements?
That's a good question. Make sure I understand by gamifying, like making it somewhat competitive or challenging,
Yeah,
or
well, I mean
yeah,
that could be a way to do it. Yeah, like I
yeah,
mean, again, I think it's like that North Star. There's a million ways to do it. How do
yeah.
you guys go about it where it's not just checking that box, like, okay, yeah, I
Uh,
jumped a few times, you know?
the this came from Lou is we throw money down like
Okay.
for
Okay.
something, and this we had one. It was a kneeling jump to a box, and it's one of those things we just let grow. It started off as like, okay, we're going to get this done in 10 minutes, but everyone is so locked in. It's like, I want to get the biggest height. I'm like, okay, we're going to take something out. It's one of the like rare, like exercises where everyone's like, oh, they're taking this super competitive. So then I just threw $20 down. I'm like, if you can jump from your knees to a 26-inch box, I'll put in 20. And then everyone starts putting in. And then they're like, it became
Damn.
the motivation started going like
Oh
from
yeah.
fun to where like this is a fucking competition. And but that comes from like Lou, they put money in the chalk bowl. They would put on, okay, you made a beat me in max effort. I'm going to beat you in this accessory. So that's where the competitive culture comes in. And like we are all for that. Once we put some parameters on the top end that we try like, okay, you're not going to fucking miss the box and fall back. I would say one good investment we did is we got rid of the steel jump boxes and went to foam because there was a few shins that got stitches from that, and like that was not worth the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. But it's I think from a coaching perspective is to read the room
Yeah.
in that like okay, this is an exercise that they really enjoy doing, and if they really enjoy it, it helps with the culture. And then if you know like I'm just going to throw $20 down and see where this goes or whatever it is to see them go, and that's where you see the professional athlete. They're like, oh, boom. Now it's a competitive environment and they're getting a microdose of that. And then once it's over, it sets up the rest of the workout
Oh
that
yeah,
they're like,
and it
okay,
doesn't even matter. The size of the bill doesn't even matter. It's the
no,
prestige of winning it, you know? It's
yeah,
that and there was another point that I haven't gotten back to that you mentioned earlier with the training partners. There's something that I'm really big on is normalizing competition. I think that a lot of times when competition is this thing that's built up that happens very infrequently, it's anxiety inducing, it can be counterproductive. You don't see people bringing forth their best. If you can find productive ways to normalize competition, beautiful things happen. So yeah, I mean that is a technique I haven't tried, but I may have to throw that out there. That's beautiful. Charles, do you have any thoughts on I don't know if you can really one up pulling out money, but are there
Well,
ways that you gamify that?
I had Faris in the other day, and he got the 50s out. So the 110, the 110 dumbbells for in pounds. And I said, if you can do more than 8 reps on this, I'll give you 10 quid. And because I was like, there's no way he's gonna fucking get 8 reps of this. He did
All
10
right, so
reps.
you guys pay out your
He,
athletes all the time. Is this like an intervention? Is this something I'm missing out on? What the hell is this?
this was just a one-off. I didn't because I said he goes, let me do the 55s. I'm like, man, you barely just did the 45s. What are you talking about? Get like, I mean, so you just did the 47s. Get the 50s. He's like, nah, man, I want the 55s. I'm like, trust me, do the 50s. And he goes, how much for 8 reps? I'm like, I'll give you 10 quid. He did 10 reps, man. He fucking crushed it.
Dang. So then you paid the 10 quid, but then you're like, all right, but now this gives some context to your earlier sets. You've been holding out.
You've been holding
yeah.
up, man. And he wasn't not it's not like he was fried at the end of those 10 reps either. So it was a good stimulus. For the deep tier stuff, I think the buy-in is like coordination of the movement as well. Like when they start, a lot of these guys, they just hate being shit at things. And I'm like, all right, I know all of these movements are going to have really good carryover for mobility and muscle endurance. And if we can get them into these deeper ranges, that's excellent. And if I'm watching them doing it, and if they've got the whole gym watching them, and they're shit. They're like, this fuck. I don't get it. I'm like, pull them aside, teach them the movement, get them to do it on the spot. Let's learn this movement, and then week to week when they're coming back, they'll just slot in because they want to fit in with the fucking Congo line of all the boys doing the plyos. And if they're the odd one out, they're like, this is shit. I hate this. But I'm like, no, we need to get this. This will have improvements to your mobility and your muscle endurance for the sport. So I think that's
Yeah, so
that's
you're just like leveraging the social dynamics and allowing that group to bring out sort of the best of them.
group and also like just coordinate like their own competitiveness with like, fuck, why am I so shit at this? I should be able to, swap my fucking feet around and be able to get into a lunge. Or I should be able to stand on this block and get my like knee lower than my fucking like get drop into this position smoothly. So it's like if you can't do this position, like you should be able to do this. Of course, if you have an injury or something, then that's a completely different story. But I get buy-in from that way from them because I'm like, you should be able to do this, and like they'll see me do it, and I'll just bang it out like I'm just warming up. It's easy, and they're like, fuck. So I think that it's like an internal competition, and then the social dynamic of the room. We have
No,
crazy
I think
shit
it's
going on in
great.
the room though. We have
I
we
think
have
it's
like
great. I don't bust out money, but I guess now I have to. But something that I have done, we've got I mean, Charles, you would know this if you ever visited me when you come to the US, but you never do. Anyways, there's like these parking lines in our parking lot, and for a while we were getting like, people are they're you start at the end of the line and you're doing like your standing triple jump, ones that are easy to quantify output, right? And like I saw that people are getting competitive with it. I see that people are keeping rocks over by those parking lines so that they can use them as a marker. And one day I just went out there with like this jumbo Sharpie marker and I just and a long ass measuring tape. And now that parking line, if you look at it, has different distances like measured out, you know?
yeah
But yeah, I think with a lot like you got to kind of be creative with those plyos because it's easy to get, man, if someone's, if they're chasing a certain number on a squat, you've got that buy-in, it's gamified, it's like built into it, right? But sometimes with plyos you got to be a bit more creative to actually have that productive training environment. And talk about deep tier stuff. If we're just looking at carryover. If you look at like basing out, and like someone has me an X guard, right? Like if they're stretching my base out and I have to absorb my body, I mean that's like a deep tier plyo. It's far more like a deep tier than it is like a short ground contact time,
the skater bound, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's super valuable.
All the boys hate their pliers, by the way. Like they're like, "Fuck, can we just skip the pliers?" I'm like, "Lads, it'll be done in 10 minutes." And I'll just start the line. I'm like, "We're just going," and like, "Oh, I'll just get the best one." Oh, and you go first. This is what we're doing, and just we're in. We're going.
Dude, the Brazilians, it can be a tough sell with the Brazilians. You throw in a little bit of a language barrier. They're having a conversation on the side, in another language. It can be tough, but there is value to it, and I think
Yeah,
it's a matter of yeah, finding that ground where it is something that you can get them psyched about. Maybe you don't do as much volume, maybe you only get them bought in for a little bit less of it, but yeah, they are kind of in my opinion, they're a bit more of a unique challenge than these things that are so easily objectifiable.
yeah.
If you
Tom,
tie back into Lou had the board. The chalkboard was there for the big lifts, but having a board that displays a name and someone's King Kong on that board, like that right there is pretty good motivation.
We've got a board as well, yeah.
I need
I
to
don't think it's got numbers nearly as even in the same solar system as you guys, but at least we got that competition normalized.
I need to get a board in my gym in Trent City. Definitely.
Yeah.
Tom, what does a 2 hour weight session look like for the MMA guys back in the day?
Oh,
What
dude,
what? Come on, man. What did you do to them?
it was it was malpractice, what it was. But like that's where I was so fortunate. Like I had Matt Brown and Louis Simmons, the most blunt, direct people ever to learn from. And Matt was game for anything. And I'm like, okay, we would go through dynamic effort, and we do a combined one. So we would do bench, squat, and deadlift variations. Then we would do accessories. Then we would go outside and we'd be doing sleds, wheelbarrows. walking with safety spot or safety squat bar walks, and then we come back in, we do all the plyometrics, we do all the jumps, and it was just so much stuff that I can't really tell you what my process was. Only that Louis told me it's hard to overtrain him. I'm like, okay, I'll test the boundaries of what this is, and then Matt would have just given me so much like, dude, this is a lot. Like I have to go. And at that time, Matt Brown had twins, so he was just a new dad with twins, running his MMA, and then
My
going. And I'm like,
God.
this is the way. And then I can't remember what Lou. It's like Lou would just catch you, and then he talk to you, and then he just start talking about density, and I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, that's a thing. I'm like, well, how can we be more efficient with the? Because he's like, how many exercises you making them do? I was like, we may have 12 exercises. It's just ridiculous now looking back on it, but you're trying to establish yourself and what's working, what's not working. And then we started shrinking it, compressing it, manipulating rest times. But it was everything. It was like basically it was a stew of all the exercises you could do in a workout. And these guys, like huge credit, they will go and do them. They wouldn't say no. They're like, okay, we trust you. And I'm like, I went back and told Matt, we did a podcast a while back. I'm like, I apologize. I'm like, dude, that was just, we found out what was too much. But the benefit of it, when we found out what was too much, we'll never go back and do that again.
Yeah.
So then it came from 2 hours to 1 hour or 1 hour and a half, and then back to under 60 minutes.
What I will say, if my sampling of fighters over the years is anything similar to yours, you might say the 2 hours was malpractice. I bet they freaking loved it.
Oh, yeah. They don't, they're fighters, wrestlers, and there's a few more in between. They're the athletes that you have to slow down. They just
Yeah.
go. They just go, 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 and then you have to be the bad guy. Like, hey, we've hit our objective. Like, well, I want to do more. I'm like, you've done everything you need to do today. You have to recover or go do your sport. But we had a wrestler came visiting, and we coaches who were talking. We had him start doing sleds around our two buildings in the old place. It was about 800 meters. I forgot that he was there. I was talking to all these coaches, and we're about 40 minutes in, and all I heard is clink, clink, clink going around the building. And I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, hey, that's enough sled, and didn't complain once. He's like, what's next? And you're like, geez, dude, like, you guys are a rare breed of people.
Man, okay. So story's kind of similar to that. So my office right here on the other side of this wall is our gym space, right? And one of our like top level black belt competitors, Jonatas Gracie, was we had he was on like a big conditioning grind. We were tracking variables. He had multiple days where he was doing conditioning, and this was hilarious. So my coach Rodrigo was writing his programs, and I'm in here and I've got there's cameras out to the gym floor. And I'm texting Rodrigo and I'm like, man, what did you program for Jonatas today? And he's like, oh, like for conditioning. He's like, it's aerobic intervals. It's 30 on, 30 off. I'm like, okay, yeah, he's doing it. I'm like, how many rounds did you give him? He's like, we've been working up. He's like, he had 30 rounds today. It was a longer conditioning day. Man, Jonatas was on that piece of equipment for an hour and 15 minutes.
Just doing
Supposed to
30
be
on,
30
30
minutes.
off.
Yeah, and the funniest part is I texted him about it. And I was like, "Oh, did you do what was on the program today?" He's like, "Yeah, I did what was on the program." Like he just doubled it and then some, and then just flat out told me that he only did the 30 minutes. Like they want more. And he
Fuck,
Yeah.
wasn't he wasn't like dogging it effort-wise either. Man, it was on the ski erg and there was just a pool of sweat there afterwards. You
Jesus
know? Like
Christ.
sometimes leaving those guys to their own devices,
An
they
hour and
will
15 of 30 on, 30 off, man.
insane, dude. Of his own volition. Like it wasn't even programmed. Crazy.
But it goes
Crazy.
back to your culture, to where to have something like that to be bought in, to trust, and to go through it. And like it speaks volumes to the atmosphere and the coach. You're like, God damn. And that's where you're like, I better be diligent because they're going to do whatever we tell them to do and like a better work. Like
For
a
sure.
decimal point, especially when it comes to minutes, like you're putting in, it should be 3 minutes and actually becomes 30. Like, they're going to do the 30.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah.
Um, you, uh, I have a question based on that, and it's slightly off but on topic. Tracking metrics and data. What do you guys track? What's the most important for you guys to track in terms of data?
Yeah.
For what?
in terms of weight training and for heart rate, just in general, like a general overview of everything you track.
Yeah. So I'm a man. Okay, I've taken like my pendulum has swung a bit. I will now look at heart rate data. I have one guy that I work with. I've worked with him on and off in person and remotely for like the last 8 years. And he's pretty big into like high rocks now. And his stuff is so dialed, his sleep, his nutrition, and everything else that his heart rate data is extremely reliable. And he's always using the chest strap. Um, he is like an exception to where my pendulum currently is at. With him, we can place a lot more weight on that. I think it's very reliable. It tells us a lot about not just the training effect, but not just like the training effect of that day, but like, weekly workload, et cetera, et cetera. Um, I'm actually not a massive fan of heart rate work for a lot of fighters. Now, I'm not saying it can't work. I'm not saying that coaches can't use that effectively. I'm just at a point right now where I'm looking at like useful data versus noise. And I do think that in a less, so that Hyrox guy, everything that he does work-wise is 100% of his own volition. And it is uniquely different to the demands of a jiu-jitsu athlete, where, for example, I could have five-minute rounds with the same five partners on Monday and Wednesday and have a drastically different training effect based on that. So, for that reason, I have found very often that heart rate data can muddy the waters, especially if you're placing too much emphasis on it for conditioning. Um, so right now for conditioning, what I do for prescription is a lot more just like general RPE, like effort-based stuff. And then for progress, we're just testing output. Can you perform more work in the same or less amount of time? I think it is purposefully very simplified, and I think it does very well given that extremely variable nature of these guys' lives. So at large, that tends to be my approach nowadays. We're tracking output and we are prescribing stuff and getting feedback and stuff based on just effort. So that's where I'm at with the majority of my work. I do like when the settings controlled enough to really dial in with a lot of that heart rate stuff, but I think with a lot of fighters, it just it tends to end up more in the noise category from my perspective than than like truly reliable data.
I
What
do
about you, Charles?
I do the same thing for conditioning. Like I don't do a lot of conditioning with the top level boys. I find once I've started adding it in, they just get way too fatigued. And uh, especially for like a couple of my athletes, we've tried to reduce some of the dosages and reduce some of the IPE, but they just end up like either one just hating it or they just continually get sick. And it's like just becomes a bigger issue thing of like, why do they keep getting sick? Antibiotics. It's like a, so it's like a, that's like a puzzle within itself. But so I don't do a lot of conditioning with the top level fellas. For in terms of weights, we're just tracking what they're lifting. We're looking at, once if anything stops progressing, we're going to change that exercise out for them. We're going to do something else. We're going to like change a variation, change an angle, add an eccentric, add a pause to where we need. But we're not tracking, definitely not as methodical as you, Tom, from a pounds per minute or like an app standpoint.
With the like, be honest with you, it's it sounds way fancier than what it is. It's exactly what you're saying. It's like we're just measuring how much volume we got done in a space, like a particular amount of time. But like we're all in the same boat as like there is so much data, there's so much noise, and you're
Yeah.
like, there's just not enough time. Last year, or maybe it was the year before. I went down a rabbit hole of like I got every piece of vault testing equipment there was to play with it. I'm like, okay, we're going to get so much useful data out of this. And after 4 months, I'm like, this is a terrible mistake. Kill
It could be
culture,
a nightmare, dude.
Mayor. It killed the culture. the I thought we were going to get an objective measure for connective tissue strength. Like that was my theory. I was like, okay, you've got, and I was like, it just takes up some, it kills kill culture. They're like, we have
Fine,
to,
man.
it killed the momentum. And I'm like, just fucking isometrics. Isometrics is so mo far more easier to put in. And then there's so much, and like the data is not useful. I have it, but I'm not making anything that changes the needle on the workout. Like, why am I doing this?
And when you
It's,
get the feedback from them, you're going to make the same change on the fly anyways that you would have
yeah,
made without the data. So then you're like, why am I collecting this anyways?
Mm.
yeah, it's just, it's so inefficient. And they're not going to go out and like, hey, Tom, that vault exercise, and this is from strength and conditioning, whatever about the therapy world, that's where it's from. But from strength and conditioning perspective, they're not going to go to a match like, hey, that I really felt that hip external rotation on the vault carry over. I was like, fuck, dude. And it's just we tried it and quickly got it out of there, but it's keeping it simple. There's so much data. Like with heart rate, a lot for physical literacy is like they put on a heart rate, especially to get into zone two. This is what zone two feels like. If you don't know what it is, it's giving you a metric back. The same with all the different intensity zones for cardio. We tried to do it through workouts for maybe 1 month, and I just threw them out. It was just wasn't giving any feedback
Mm.
that was meaningful and purposeful.
For sure. I've even, man, I went on a similar kick because some of my guys have I actually like the Morpheus like
Yeah, yeah,
chest
Oh,
strap.
yeah, yeah.
Joe
Actually
Jameson.
yeah, and it
Yep.
actually stays on quite well during jujitsu, compared to other ones I've tried. So I went on a kick myself where I went a solid 4 or 5 months where every jujitsu training session I did, I was wearing it, and because I wanted to start with me first, and really see like again, like, sort of like the process you were talking about, Tom. I was like, okay, I'm collecting this data, I'm looking at it. I'm even going into certain sessions. Like, there were times where I would go to like Atos to train, right? And just do the training that they have there. I would also, I've got all these guys coming in and out of my gym. I got mats here. So I would set up my own training sessions with a very specific intent. And it's just, man, no matter what your intent is during that session, whatever continue continuity you have with your training partners. Dude, Charles, if you and I rolled 3 rounds on 3 different days, the physiological effect would be markedly different each day. On one of those rounds, if you get ahead of me early and I'm playing catch up, right? I'm just defending positions, and like it's going to be very different, even though you're the same training partner. And
Bro,
yeah, I basically
I'll be
I
zone
found.
five the whole time.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. It gets this. Oh yeah, we're gonna do some
Um,
some light situations today, and you're like, wow, I'm sitting in zone five. Yeah,
bro,
it's
sorry, go.
no, I'm just saying it. I basically came to the same conclusion where I was like, man, this is noise. I don't think, and at any point in time, if there was any conclusion to be drawn from the heart rate data, it would be the same conclusion that I would come up with just based on vibes. I'd be like, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
smoked today. You look at the heart
Yep.
rate data, it's like, yeah, of course you're fucking smoked today. You know?
One thing I was surprised with, I got a Whoop recently. I actually broke it yesterday morning just trying to put my fucking backpack on. And I was on the Airdyne and I like doing these 30-minute long pieces because I only do jiu-jitsu like 2, 3 times a week, right? So I do enjoy the longer aerobic rounds versus the short stuff, short, sharp, disgusting stuff. And I jump on for half an hour and I put in the heart rate thing on. I'm zone five for like 12 to 12 minutes, zone forward like 10 minutes plus.
Dude,
I was
that's
surprised by like that because I was like, I don't feel like I'm, in zone five. And I'm looking at the thing, it's just fucking red line the whole way through.
No, man, for fighters, that's so common. You
Yeah.
could have a guy, the whole like conversational thing. Bro, a guy does not need to be in zone two. A fighter of mine does not need to be in zone two to hold a conversation with me. They could be zone three, zone four, holding the conversation just fine. So again,
Yep.
like a lot of these things, it can be useful. Again, for that High Rocks athlete, he's got so much dialed in. He doesn't like. Another thing that threw me for a loop is like caffeine consumption, right? And like you're
Yeah.
looking at different now all of a sudden we're messing with that metric like considerably. And myself, I do really limit my caffeine consumption to early in the day, but I'm not it's not horribly consistent in terms of like the same number of milli. And we, again, we're just like muddying the waters, right? Like something that when I've got more caffeine running through my veins, something that's now zone five might not be at like a zone five effort level, you know?
Yeah.
Caffeine is beautiful for that, man.
Oh, it is.
I'm glad you brought up the Whoop because I understand the consumer market and I understand the efficacy of it. But when you're dealing with a pro athlete, a fighter, for instance, and they have a fight, they wake up the morning of fight day and the Whoop says, do not do anything.
Yeah.
Then one that's in their head of like, oh shit, I'm not on form. And what are they going to go up to the promoter and say, I'm sorry, my Whoop has told me that today is not a good, like that's not the real world. I understand for the general consumer where it fits in and to track stuff, it's cool, it's neat. But if anything can take from the psychological aspect of getting ready for an event and you're feeling like poop, your thing's telling you like, oh, it's not a benefit. So it's
It's a,
not an advantage, it's
Sure.
going to be a disadvantage.
it's a complete disadvantage. Like as we know, sorry, Alex, you go.
No, I mean, dude, it's a nocebo. Like, and not even just for fight day. I don't know. You got to do training jujitsu is his job. He's got to go. He's got to go fight a bunch of the best fighters every single day, right? The last thing he needs is his watch telling him that he's recovered like shit. Like, yeah, based on regular human standards, that human is waking up a little bit under recovered. Like, we
Yeah.
don't need anything telling him that, you know?
He knows that, yeah. Like, and we know like winning matches is fucking mindset as well. When you speak to these guys who operate at the highest level, their ability to lock in is just different to other people's. And if you have that little nocebo, that will subconsciously still fuck with you. Like since my I broke it the other day, my recovery is not like amazing on this. And I also have this mattress thing that does my sleep stats. And the mattress is always I feel like more efficient on the recovery front versus the whoop strap. Like I'd wake up and it's like 23% recovered and I slept 8 hours. I'm like, what what more do you want from me? Like, what do you want me to do with that information? Like I literally tried my best to get a good night's sleep and then the next night will be like 43%. You're like, of course there's maybe some things I can change. Don't eat so close to bed or cut the screen time down. But it's like I don't need this fucking like no like thing telling me, oh, you're under recovered or whatever, when I feel like I'm actually getting really good quality sleep.
Bro, one of my buddies was trying to collect data for a force plate like counter movement jump thing and see how it can predict readiness. And
Yeah.
like it did, but you know what else predicted readiness perfectly? The athlete being like, "Hey, I feel really good today." Guess what? On the day where they go, "I'm feeling really good today," they've got a higher counter movement jump, and then they're going to perform better with their lifts. Like it's
Yeah.
again, like we're overcomplicating this thing that like we've got an athlete who lives in their body, 24/7. They are calibrated to how they're feeling and everything else. I mean, sometimes you could make fun of like vibes and stuff, but like
No,
that
it's big.
that really does tell a lot of the picture sometimes. And to bring it back to what Tom was talking about earlier, getting that feedback, getting that information from them, they have a pretty damn good idea when they walk in. Sure, you can test it if you want some sort of like objective metric. You could have some sort of watch that tells you your recovery score is 73 to sure. But also like they walk in today and they're like, bro, I'm smoked. They're not gonna set a counter movement jump like PR that day.
Yeah.
They're just not. And they're also not gonna set a back squat PR that day, you know?
Also,
But like, what is the value of something external telling you that you suck today? I don't necessarily see that falls more to me in the noise category than in like the valuable data category.
the vibes thing is funny. I've been training this guy for like he's just like he works in a bank. He's very successful, super like fucking driven. And I've been training him for like 7 years, 3 times a week. And he used to play like pretty high level rugby. So he loves his lifts. He loves getting stuck into his squatting, deadlifting, benching. And he's super obsessive about his training. Like he trains fucking hard when he's in the weight room. And you know, because he trained so hard, he's built up the great foundation, blah, blah, blah. One time he comes in, he's recently single. He texts me in the morning on Saturday morning. He's like, I'm blind. Like I've been out till fucking 3 in the morning. I'm super fucking hungover. And like we had it like kind of scheduled to like, PB that particular Sunday. and he's like steaming from a fucking hangover that he didn't get in from 3 in the morning. Texts me at 9 o'clock. We had a 12 o'clock session. He goes, Charles, I'm blind. Like I can barely see. I can't even get out of bed. Didn't see the message. Then at like again at 11 o'clock when I check my phone, he's like, disregard, I'm fucking coming in. And he drinks like 3 Red Bulls, comes in, PBs his squat, all-time PBs his squat, all-time PBs his fucking bench, and then like hits his accessories to an excellent degree. We've got the fucking tunes, full volume, full shit talking, smashes out of the park. Needless to say, he's exhausted after the session, but like he just got himself into a fucking state of readiness. He'd already done all the work previously before that, and he just came in and fucking smoked out of the park. When he thought he assumed, I mean, how many times have we trained someone who's come in being like, I don't feel amazing today. Let's just see how we get on. They get moving a little bit. They start being like, oh no, I actually feel pretty good. Bang, either PR or they have a really good session. So it's
Yeah,
all,
I'd rather have something external be the placebo that helps them do, like you talking about whether it's the music blasting, whether it's the shit talk or whatever. I want that, bringing it back to Tom talking about the culture and everything else. I would rather those external variables are bringing the best out of you rather than them, like cutting you down before you even have a chance to see what you got that day.
yeah,
When like I love this conversation because we have the opportunity to provide people with objective adversity in the weight room. It's something you can actually measure via weights. And when we're training athletes to be their best on the worst day possible. So when you've got through those training sessions and you've built all this up, if you feel like crap on the day of competition, and it's going to happen, you're not going to be the best, feeling the best of every competition you take. At least you know I have got through some pretty gnarly training sessions, got through it, and as again, it builds up that confidence that hey, no one's training as hard as I am, and even when I was sick or not feeling the best, I still got through it. And that's the beauty of the weight room. Like you have an opportunity for goal setting, objective adversity, to where they know, like, okay, I'm still doing something productive. So when it comes to the event, I've been through this. Like this is nothing. Like I've trained through worse.
that's such a good
No,
point.
that's our job, right?
Yep.
Like there's a million ways that you can get there, but that's
Yep.
that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be adding to that confidence. Of course, there's the general traits and everything else that we're building up for sure, but like it's also that mental approach that allows you to handle that. And to bring it back to when you're talking about, those jujitsu guys that are competing, you know, 2, 3 times a month. Yeah, there's no way you're not peaking for those competitions. You're working with what you got. You're beating the dude in front of you, and you're dealing with those adverse conditions as they roll through. It's not a matter of like, oh man, I was gonna do the open class today, but my whoop says I'm under recovered. So no, bro, go do the open class, you
Yeah.
know?
Yep. It kind of time back into everything. I would say if anyone wants to know the biggest hack to getting better, it's consistency. It's the only th to keep showing up. If you are inconsistent, it doesn't matter. If you're consistent, even on some of the most terrible programs, you will still get better with consistency.
Yeah.
Like that to me is like throughout time, the most consistent athletes we have. And like to me, like for us, Dante holds the standard. Like he does not miss, just doesn't. And he ingrains that in everyone. But that level of consistency makes you way more robust and you have way more room to maneuver for bad days and good days. Because you're never going to have a 1 out of 10. You may have a anywhere from an 8 to 6, but you have that steady 7 throughout. And being consistent is the biggest thing I tell people. Like, what's the secret? I'm like, just don't miss. Keep turning up. Be consistent.
For sure. I
But
I just phrased it differently, but I say make training unconditional. You know, uh, when you have to have the perfect conditions, when your training is conditional, when there's this slight thing holding you back and you can't, oh man, now I can't come in. No, come in. I have same thing with something pops up in their schedule and they're like, oh man, I would have only had a half hour, so I didn't come in. I'm like, what are you doing? Bro, we had a half hour to work.
Yeah.
That's a day where we're taking a step forward. Sure, we're not taking the full 3 steps forward that we would normally, but like we just passed up on a day where we can take one step forward. Another thing I'm big on with my clients is like if you hit only 2 movements and then go home, that can be a productive day. Bringing it back to like intent and focus. Like two exercises done with a ton of intent will outperform eight exercises done just sort of going through and like checking the boxes. So there again, there is a lot of that wiggle room. And when you accept that it's unconditional, that even under the most adverse of conditions, you're going to come in and you're going to find something that you can improve at. It's huge. I think that's also a really important thing to send home when there's a real adverse condition, like an injury, right? Like, I shared when I tore my adductor because even though the FP bros really came at me because I got injured training, but I think it's important. I talk a lot, dealing with fighters, people are coming in with injuries all the time. It's not like we can't sit there fixated on like what you would have been like today if you didn't get injured. Bro, get into the weight room, find something to improve at,
Yeah.
right? Like training is just training. You come in at whatever state you're in and we chip away at something. And I think when you're injured, a lot of times like people get to like that broken mentality where it's like, "Ah, man, I'm hurt now. I'm not coming in." It's like, no, dude, short of like a CNS injury or being like, crazy sick, like we got something we can do. We can be productive that day. That doesn't mean it's going to be the same thing, right? If you just had a catastrophic shoulder injury, sure, we're not hitting that bench PR today, but there is something we can do. And I think that's really big as well, especially as it relates to confidence, to self-efficacy in terms of like giving somebody an avenue to do something when maybe they can't train jujitsu or whatever combat sport they do, right? Some injuries will take them off the mats. I guarantee you there's some really productive stuff that we can do in the weight room. So making it unconditional is something that I try to preach all the time.
Big time.
Um, Not to hog everyone's time, but back to revert back to technology. Do you guys tendos, yes or no?
I was going to actually ask you about that when you were talking about
What did
yeah,
you
some of
say,
those things.
sorry?
I
Tendo units, yes or no?
like velocity, yeah, velocity based
Yeah.
training.
Oh, no, no.
Yeah, it's funny. I have with some of my buddies that are strength coaches, we joke about how I prescribe heavily to VBT, but it's vibes based training. Um, it's a lot of the same stuff. Like again, I think it's cool. One of my coaches who now he's actually interning at the UFC PI. Great opportunity for him. He's loving it over there. But he came in. He was at Point Loma Nazarene, which is down the street, and he came in this one day with like this like really cool like visual software and stuff for like velocity based training. And we went through it, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just overly simplistic, but I think that a lot of times it can fall into that noise category as well. Though I have seen it done well. There was a time I went up to Shadow at the UCLA weight room. Uh, for the football team. And they did have some cool stuff with VBT that they were doing with the guys, where they all had their different velocity profiles for it was like a clean pull,
Mhm.
and they could only move on to the strength portion of the session when they hit a rep above a certain threshold. So they're all, they're cheering for each other. One dude's dragging that day. You got the rest of the weight room. Like it can be done well. I think it can add to culture. I think that was like a great example where I saw that done and I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome, right?" It's got a velocity profile specific to each person. Some of those dudes that are dogging it that day are getting then the social like reinforcement to
Mhm.
really try to crack one out. And it's also giving them a benchmark like, hey, you hit that nice and early, boom, you get a nice early start on your strength work. If not, you better like take a nice long rest period, lock in. Again, that's a way to like allow them to build that intent and focus. Like, man, I better hit it on this next one because I don't want to do it again. I think it can be done well. I'm not saying that it's wrong in all
Mhm.
contexts. It's just something I've moved away from.
Yeah, I'd go back down to it's set and setting. If it's part of your culture, makeup as a coach, there's some phenomenal coaches who use it. Like Louis did a lot. He had two tendos, one for concentric, one for eccentric back in the day when there wasn't all this technology around. But eventually it made its way on the ceiling. They just threw it like, okay, it's done. And then we were testing units and we found so many flaws, especially when you're doing a box squat, that you just say you relax your hips in the box and you come up, you have that little kind of jerk up and down. And it was telling us like they were going at about zero point 0.4 meters per second. I'm like, this makes no sense. The peak, and I'm like, there's just so much data, and I'm like, this is going to fucking ruin the workout because once we put the guys through, like, how fast was I? How fast was I?
Yeah.
It's just not part of the culture, and I think it's really good to train your coaching eye at the start of what actually is fast. If
Yes.
you don't have any mentors and stuff, it's a great tool to use in. So we'll rotate it in and out rarely, but it's good for, especially if we've got interns coming through. Like, hey, this is what zero point 0.7 meters per second looks like.
Mm.
So then you can like actually acclimate your eye, like, okay, we're in the ballpark. But kind of the litmus test is it adding or taking away from the culture? Is it adding data that's useful, or is it subtracting my time that I can make better decisions for these guys? And it's then how effective is the person reading it? And how effective is the like I do not have any experience in electronics or validity of like how accurate is this truly, especially stuff that's Bluetooth. I have no clue what the tolerance is,
Yeah.
but I'll trust my eye more than I will. And then to some days people are just going to be slow. My first mistake when I first came here, I was working with my first NFL athlete. It was just all I'm like, we got the tendon unit, and I'm fucking like, I'm living by this. And I was like, hey, dude, you're slow. Terrible thing to say. And he's like, what? But I never had a feedback loop with the coach, and it negatively impacted his gameplay so much
Wow.
that
Yeah.
Louis was like, "What are you doing? Like, one, are you comparing him against himself? Or are you comparing him against everyone else?" I'm like, "I'm to the base, like to everyone else. Like, why? Everyone's fucking different. Why are you doing that? Like, throw that fucking thing away." And of which I did, and I explained to the guy how I messed up. And again, this is just trial and error as a coach going through. Obviously, he went somewhere else, and as well, he should have. But that's where it's like, okay, there's context to everything. It's not just as simple as, hey, this is how fast you should be.
For sure. And I think there's like that shiny object syndrome, right? Where
Oh yeah,
like especially with coaches, like we want to do some I get it. Like you want and also we love this stuff, right? So like sometimes adding some metrics, like for a while, man, when I was tracking my heart rate for my own jujitsu sessions, it at for a time,
It's
it
sick.
made those sessions way more fun. Yeah, you know what I mean? I
yeah,
was like, oh, let's mess with this variable, let's see what happens here. But like when I zoomed out, when I've been doing it long enough, like, is this actually adding anything? I was like, it's not, you know? It's and I think those trial and error moments are they're defining, you know, and I think you can fall back. It can even give you far more confidence as a coach to trust that eye, you know?
yeah.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
think kind of like most of the interns that come through, I start them off with like, here's all the mistakes I made. Like, so at the very least, do not make these. And if you do, you have been warned, and that's on you. But it's it's everything just comes back full circle to simple. How do we simplify training to get the maximum result?
But even learning from those mistakes, the tools were still useful because you learn from
Oh
the
yeah,
mistake. You're like, oh, it's great. Like you said, it's like tracking calories. You're not going to do it forever. You just track for a little bit and you have an understanding of like what how much protein is in this chicken breast, how much protein is in these eggs. Then you figure it out and you're like, okay, cool. I get it now. I don't need to do this
yeah,
again. And then there'll be a time where it's like, oh, we need to do something more specific. Let's get the things out. But if it's interrupting with the session and the vibes, fuck it off.
Yep.
agreed.
Sick, boys. This has been almost 2 hours.
No
Excellent
problem.
discussion.
I
I know it
really
was a
appreciate the
blast. It
time.
was yeah, and it was nice to meet you, Tom.
Same to you, sir.
Nice, boys. I'll get Tom. Where can we find you? Where do you want people to find you, man?
We got website, westside-barbell.com, a bunch of blogs there. I don't think we have mastered social media in the sense of the content you put out, Alex, but there's stuff on there. But our website, we write a lot, and you can email us or email me on tom@westside-barbell.com. Be glad to help or answer questions.
Beautiful, Alex. We get a lecture performance on there, and you're which one are you pushing now? You're trying to do both at the same time, right?
Yeah, I've got this really cool system called ADHD. Um, Yeah, yeah, I mean you can find me on either. My YouTube is Electrum Performance on Instagram. I got one for Electrum Performance and then one for my personal. My personal's a little more unhinged, and then the professional stuff is you know, corralled over to the Electrum Performance page.
How's the YouTube going, man?
Bro, it's not going as well as yours, I'll tell you that. I did have the goal this year to hit 10K, which I did
Oh yeah.
a little while ago, but yeah, I mean it's going. I think YouTube is cool. I do like long form stuff, takes a lot more work, but when we're talking about these things, even this discussion here, uh while it will probably be cool to chop some of this up into like a small clip for Instagram, it's like the depth of those conversations and the longer form stuff that I think is really valuable.
Yeah, of course. You need to use the. I actually learned this from Angus. You need to use the platforms for what the platform's intention is. Like Instagram. If you're putting long form content on Instagram, like no one, the behavior of how people interact with that app, they're not going to watch the long form content. TikTok's even shorter. YouTube Shorts, same thing. So you can just like kind of bu bucket all of that short form content into the kind of the same app. But then I think for if you are a coach or if you are, well, do you want to get into influencing, whatever, you need to have the the long form content where you can actually express yourself fully. Because I feel like with the short form content, you can get little bits and pieces out, but it's like, again, the YouTube is the big bang for buck where you can have the longer podcast kind of like discussions and really flesh out points. Like we're just 2 hours talking about training, which is amazing. It's cool.
It's great stuff. It'd be cool if we could all live together sometime, you know?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
well, open invite down here for any of you guys. Come through
Man, I
Where
will
are
take
you
you
again,
up.
Tom?
for sure. What's that?
Where are you again?
We are in the metropolis of Columbus, Ohio.
Sick.
It's easy to get to and it's great for training.
I will take you up on that at some point. That would be incredible
Please do.
to head to the Mecca, you know?
Columbus,
Oh,
Ohio.
it'll be a,
Yeah, let's take up a trip, Sterner. We'll go there together. I've been meaning to get down to Alex's for a while, but I was in America for a month last like in September. Alex was like, look at him, he's not happy right now.
Bro, this guy plays hard to get all the time. It's actually terrible.
well, and you're probably in like one of the most beautiful parts of America up there.
San
Yeah,
Diego.
you'd think some international traveler might want to like just stroll by.
No, I did the road. I was in I went to New York, Miami. I did Chicago, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, Utah. But it's fun. It's amazing. I love America, man. I keep saying to Alex, I want to move over there. Between that and Australia, that's good. They're the next
But
living
you've
destination.
got you've got future Yankee written all over you.
Yeah, man. I love it. Boys, great to chat with you. We'll get this podcast up soon. And yeah, fuck yeah. Let's do it again sometime soon.
I'd love
Appreciate
to.
you.
Anytime on chat. Appreciate it.